playing with destiny. An explosive encounter traffic in New York was a chaos, and Claire Bennett knew it better than anyone. With coffee in one hand and her bag in the other, she ran along the sidewalk. SQ Juvando gente, like if it were an Olympic competition. Lo siento, permiso, he shouted while dodging a bicycle delivery person. But just when he thought he would arrive at the office without problemas, collided head-on with someone, his coffee flew into the air and landed on the impeccable white shirt of the man in front of him. Oh my God! I'm so sorry, said Claire, horrified. Look, I see the large brown stain on the fabric. The tall, dark-haired man sighed, but instead of yelling at her, he smiled amusedly. Well, that's an interesting way to start the day. Claire lifted. She looked up and found a pair of blue eyes that seemed to be analyzing her with curiosity. Really? I'm sorry. Let me pay for the dry cleaning. Don't worry, I'll survive. But if you feel guilty, payable, perhaps you could buy me a coffee to compensate. Claire blinked in surprise. Are you asking me out on a date after I ruined your shirt? The man shrugged. Perhaps I avoid dangerous women. I'm Jake Miller, by the way. Claire laughed, unable to help it. Claire Bennett. Jake winked at her before pointing to the coffee shop on the corner. So Claire, ready para your punishment? And so, what began as a disaster became the most interesting coffee of his life. A game of flirting the days passed. And, somehow, Claire and Jake kept meeting dosed. A message here, an excuse to see each other there, and soon, the morning coffee became their little tradition. Do you know, you are the most clumsy woman I have ever met, said Jake one day, while she almost spilled her drink again. And you are the most unbearably charming man I have ever met, replied Claire with a smile. Jake laughed, but in his eyes there was something more. Something which made her feel that this was not just a game. The night at the gala. When Jake invited her to a charity gala for his company, Claire hesitated. But Olivia, her best friend, wouldn't let her say no. Come on, Claire. When was the last time you had a date at a luxury event? So there she was, in a red dress that fit her perfectly, feeling like she had entered a fairy tale. Modern. When Jake saw her, he let out a low whistle. Wow, this is definitely worth a ruined shirt. Claire rolled her eyes. But when Jake offered her his arm, she felt something inside. It was melting. The night passed between laughter, stolen glances, and a dance that made everything around them disappear. If you keep looking at me like that, I'm going to think you're in love with me, Jia whispered. While I was spinning it on the dance floor. Don't get excited, Miller Claire replied, although her heart was beating fast. But deep down, they both knew this was serious. The past. Everything was going well, too well, until Claire saw something that left her frozen. A woman hugging Jake in the street. And not just any woman, but his ex-girlfriend, the famous and beautiful Rachel Sinclair. Claire felt that something inside her was breaking. When Jake called her later, she didn't answer. And when she finally confronted him, her words were cold. I didn't know you liked the missed opportunities. Jake frowned. What are you talking about? I saw Rachel with you. She seemed pretty comfortable. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. Claire, it's not what you think. Ella appeared out of nowhere. She wanted to talk, but it means nothing to me. And how do I know that's true? Jake looked at her seriously. Because the only woman who matters to me is you. Claire wanted to believe him. She wanted to run into his arms and forget everything. But fear stopped her. So she simply said, I need time. And she left, leaving Jake standing on the sidewalk, his gaze full of something that seemed pain. Love or fear? The days without Jake were strange. Claire realized that she missed him more than she wanted to admit. So when Olivia looked at her one day and said, if you're afraid of losing it, it means you really care. Claire knew what she had to do. She went to look for him. She found him in his usual cafe, looking at his phone with a frustrated expression. When he cleared his throat, Jake looked up and his expression immediately changed. Claire? She took a deep breath. I was an idiot. Jake smiled slightly. A little, yes. Claire rolled her eyes. I'm sorry. I was scared. I didn't want to fall in love with someone who could break my heart. Jake looked at her intently before taking her hand. And what if instead of worrying about that, we simply shall we let ourselves be carried away? Claire smiled. I like how you think, Miller. Jake leaned in, and in a kiss, Destiny decided that the spilled coffee had been the best mistake of his life. End.